I have to start with something that really, I wouldn't say it upset me, but it definitely grabbed my attention and did not make me excited. So Yahoo Sports is, it's a publication. I don't read it a ton, but from time to time they will release things that I do read. And this writer by the name of Tom Haberstroh of Yahoo Sports wrote something that I had to go read. He did an entire thing on Michael Jordan's 1988 Defensive Player of the Year season. He went back, he took a closer look, and he raised some questions about it. And anytime you raise questions about the greatest basketball player to ever live, like I have to read it. I have to see what your questions are, especially when it comes to Michael Jordan's 1988 Defensive Player of the Year season. Because this season, the only year ever a player has both won the scoring title and won Defensive Player of the Year, this season has played a role in the GOAT debate. Okay, this Defensive Player of the Year award gives Michael Jordan something that LeBron James doesn't have. It gives him something that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar doesn't have. It gives him something that Magic Johnson doesn't have. Recognition of being the league's best defender for a single season. And what Haberstroh finds is very interesting. He went back, he looked through old box scores, he watched old games, and he interviewed a man by the name of Alex Rucker. Alex Rucker used to be the scorekeeper for the Vancouver Grizzlies, right? Started in the 95-96 season working for the Grizzlies when they were an expansion team. And in the interview, Rucker admits that he used to juice the Grizzlies stats during home games. And as he's explaining this, he then goes on to say that every scorekeeper juiced their home team stats during home games. This is what he claims. That leads us to the basis of Haberstroh's argument, where Michael Jordan's home and road splits have quite the discrepancy. They're very different in that 1988 season. At home, Michael Jordan averaged 4 steals and 2 blocks a game. That's pretty good. That's pretty insane. But on the road, Michael Jordan's numbers shrunk to 2 steals and 1 block a game. So basically, he was twice the defender at home versus what he was on the road. It gets better. Michael Jordan's 10-steal game, right? I believe that is definitely the most in Bulls franchise history for a single game. I can't remember if the all-time NBA record is that 10 or if it's 11. I don't remember. But either way, 10 steals in a game is mightily impressive. That game is on YouTube. And if you go watch it, he only recorded 6 steals. Right? If you go back and you watch the tape, Michael Jordan only steals the basketball 6 times, but it was recorded as 10. And it was a home game. And another game that season, the scorekeeper gave Michael Jordan more steals than his opponent had live turnovers. And this didn't only happen once. It happened multiple times during the season. Once again, Haberstroh went back, he watched these games himself, he tracked the stats himself, and he had a buddy do the exact same thing to double-check his work. There is merit to the claim that Michael Jordan's defensive numbers that year in 1988, the year he won Defensive Player of the Year, there was merit to those numbers being juiced. I will not deny it. But here's the other thing. Every scorekeeper was apparently doing this. So everybody's numbers from that era were juiced. They were. It wasn't like he was the only player whose numbers were being juiced. Okay? And this is a season that's really important to the history of basketball, especially when we have the GOAT debate, because Michael Jordan, because of this season, has more Defensive Player of the Years than LeBron James. But here's the truth of it. As important as this season is, because anytime that there's a season where it's the only time that something has happened, for example, Michael Jordan winning Defensive Player of the Year and being the scoring champ, like that's a big deal. But from a GOAT debate standpoint, which is what all the LeBron fans have wanted to turn this conversation into, it's not a cornerstone of it. In terms of the GOAT debate, this holds no weight whatsoever. Because even if Michael Jordan hadn't won the 1988 Defensive Player of the Year, he would still be regarded as the greatest basketball player of all time by many. Because the heart, the cornerstone of the Michael Jordan is the GOAT argument, the cornerstone of it is that he won 6 titles in 6 tries with 6 finals MVPs. And as long as that still stands, which the last time I checked, it does, he is still going to be regarded as the greatest basketball player of all time by many. Even if he hadn't won Defensive Player of the Year in 1988, he was still a great defender. It doesn't change anything. Okay, sure, maybe Michael Jordan has an extra accolade he maybe shouldn't have. But once again, let me remind you, if all the scorekeepers were doing this, like Alex Rucker suggested in his interview, then everybody's numbers were juiced. Okay? But here's the thing. In terms of this 1988 Defensive Player of the Year award, it doesn't move the needle at all in terms of the greatest of all time debate. Because the primary argument for Jordan, 6 titles, 6 tries, 6 finals MVPs, those accolades still stand and are not in any sort of question whatsoever. Also, if this is going to be a big deal, if this is going to be a thing where we start questioning everything Michael Jordan ever did because the scorekeepers at that time during his home games boosted his stats, if this is going to be in question, then we now must go back and look at everyone who played during this era. We now have to ask questions like, is John Stockton really the all-time assist leader? Or did the Utah Jazz home scorekeeper just juice his numbers repeatedly? Is Wilt Chamberlain really the all-time leading rebounder? Or did the home scorekeeper for the Lakers and when he played in San Francisco, or did those scorekeepers just boost his numbers? Like, are we really going to go back and ask all these questions? Because I don't think that we are. If people are going to question the 1988 Defensive Player of the Year award in a season where, sure, Michael Jordan's numbers were probably boosted based off of the evidence that Harbaugh gives in his Yahoo article. If we're going to question it, therefore we must question everything else that happened during that era. And I don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. The only people that want to do that are LeBron James fans because they know in their heart of hearts that Michael Jordan truly is the greatest basketball player to ever pick up the rock. Moving on, JJ Reddick. JJ Reddick. Let's get off that Michael Jordan stuff. Okay, let's not change history. Okay, like this is what happened. I get that LeBron fans don't like it, but you know what, LeBron fans, you guys can be happy about this. JJ Reddick is the new Lakers head coach. This isn't surprising at all. Okay, but before Dan Hurley even came into the conversation, everyone knew that this was going to happen at some point. The idea of Danny Hurley leaving UConn to go be the coach of the Lakers was cool for like 5 seconds, and then people sobered up and they realized he's not going to leave UConn. Not for the Lakers, maybe for, the Knicks or maybe for the 76ers, but not for the Lakers. He's not going to move away from the Northeast unless he absolutely has to. So, not at all surprising that yesterday, JJ Reddick was officially hired as the Lakers head coach. Some people don't like the hire. I don't really mind it. Like the podcast thing to me, not that big of a deal. I don't think that it is. And part of that is because the most important thing for any head NBA coach is that the star of whatever team they are coaching on buys into whatever they are selling. For example, the reason why Rick Carlisle is the head coach of the Indiana Pacers is for 2 reasons. One, Tyrese Halliburton is buying into everything that Rick Carlisle is selling. Number 2, when Rick Carlisle was in Dallas, Luka Doncic was not buying into everything that Rick Carlisle was selling. And that's why he's here now. It's a star-driven league. Stars hold all the power, especially when it comes to head coaches. And in watching that podcast, because I watch it, I listen to it, I find it fascinating. I feel like I learn something every time I tune in. Through watching that, LeBron James is going to buy into whatever JJ Reddick says the Lakers should do. The respect that LeBron James has for JJ Reddick is obvious. It's clear. It's plain as day. Okay, he wouldn't be doing an X's and O's type of podcast if he didn't think that JJ Reddick was smart. He wouldn't be doing this if he didn't think that JJ Reddick had a good basketball mind. He wouldn't do this with him if he didn't think that JJ Reddick knew and understood the game of basketball. The other thing is, JJ Reddick's smart. I know people don't like it when he calls games. I personally don't mind it. Whenever he calls games, I expect to learn something new. Okay. Every time I listen to his podcast as well, I expect to learn something new. And most of the times, I do learn something. Okay. JJ Reddick is plenty smart enough to coach at the NBA level. That is not the question about this hire. The concern with the hire is that JJ Reddick has never coached before, but he played in the league for 15 years. Okay. During his time playing basketball through his entire life, he played for multiple good coaches. In college, he played for Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, one of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time, whether you like him or not. Okay, I guarantee you that he learned things from Coach K that he is going to use as the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Okay, when he was in the NBA, he played for multiple good coaches, including Stan Van Gundy, Doc Rivers, Brett Brown, and Rick Carlisle. No matter how you feel about all of those coaches, they have all been successful. And once again, I guarantee you that JJ Reddick learned different things from being in that locker room. Okay? I guarantee you. And because JJ Reddick has played for so many different coaches with so many different players, he's going to be well equipped. There will not be a situation that he hasn't seen, whether that's from, like whether that's an in-game type of scenario or it's an off the court, this player doesn't like this other player type of scenario. And back in 2022, Taylor Rooks of Bleacher Report did a sit-down interview with JJ Reddick where she asked him why he would be a good NBA coach. And here's what new Lakers coach JJ Reddick had to say 2 years ago about why he would be a good coach.
I don't necessarily think it's one thing. I feel like I know the game pretty well because of some coaches I played for, really specifically Coach K. He taught me about adaptability. And our game, the NBA, changes so fast year to year. Having the mindset of just being open to change. One of my greatest skills as a human being is my ability to communicate and communicate in an open and transparent way. I did that as a teammate. I think that's part of coaching, not avoiding things and not avoiding confrontation. Locker rooms, team chemistry, it's a very fragile thing. We see it all the time in the NBA. I look at coaching as a way to help. It's like I had so many people help me in my career, and not just head coaches, but assistant coaches, player development people. And they have such a valuable place in my heart and in my life. And I'd love to be one of those people someday.
That was JJ Reddick discussing why he would be a good NBA coach 2 years ago with Taylor Rooks of Bleacher Report. And I have to be honest, I love his response, especially the part where he talks about adaptability. Because once again, JJ Reddick is right. The NBA changes every single year. It does. Okay, teams just watched how the Boston Celtics went on a run and won the finals. The NBA, like the NFL, is a copycat league. Teams are now going to change their teams to either try and do what the Celtics did, or they're going to adjust their roster to try and stop what the Celtics did. We saw the Timberwolves do that this year. They added bigs to help try and slow down Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets, and it worked. We also saw the Rockets start to run their offense through a good passing center, like how the Nuggets do with Jokic. The league changes every single year. And having a coach that understands that is important. JJ Reddick does. He played in the NBA for 15 years. From the time that he was drafted to the time that he retired, the league changed a lot. Okay? And he was able to adapt his game to stay in the league. If he can do it as a player, then I don't see why he couldn't do it as a coach. We have also seen former players get hired as head coaches before with no prior experience. Okay, like this isn't a new thing. Steve Nash was hired by the Nets in 2020. He wasn't a bad coach. He just had to coach James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving, and none of them wanted to play basketball for whatever reason when they were in Brooklyn. That's a tough job. I thought he did a good job. In spite of that, Kevin Durant having smaller feet away from appearing in the Eastern Conference Finals. So I didn't think that Steve Nash was that bad of a coach, but I digress on that. Steve Kerr was also hired with no prior coaching experience, and he's doing a great job. He's one of the best coaches in the NBA. To be fair, for every Steve Kerr, for every new head coach that has never coached before that played, there is a Derek Fisher who was hired by the Knicks and he was terrible. Okay? So we've seen former players that have never coached before come in and be great. We have seen former players that now coach come in and be awful. When it comes to JJ Reddick, though, I think he will be closer to Steve Kerr than Derek Fisher. Okay, he's not going to be Steve Kerr. I just think he's going to lean that way more so than lean the Derek Fisher way of not coaching for very long. For one, the reason why I say that is because he does get to coach LeBron James and Anthony Davis for a couple of years. That always helps when you have good players to coach right out of the gate. From a personality perspective, though, because that's really what matters, it's clear that he understands basketball enough to coach in the NBA. I don't think anybody is going to question that aspect of his coaching ability. He is clearly smart enough. He clearly understands basketball well enough to coach at the NBA level. But when it comes to his personality, I think that he checks a lot of boxes. He's driven. Like, you don't have the success in media that he's had without being driven. He's clearly intelligent. He's the only former player who has a podcast that I listen to, because when he does interviews, he asks smart questions. So he is intelligent. He is a major competitor. You don't play in the NBA for 15 years unless you are competitive. And he is meticulous in his attention to detail. Okay? When you listen to how he runs his podcast and how involved he is at ESPN, he is involved in every single aspect of it. His attention to detail is there. And I think that these are the qualities that some of the best head coaches in the NBA have. And these are the qualities that are going to lead JJ Reddick into being a good NBA head coach. With that being said, there will obviously be rough stretches for JJ Reddick throughout the season because he's never coached before. That's why he should 1,000% coach the Lakers Summer League team. Okay, it's going to give him an opportunity to figure out how he wants to run practice. It's going to give him opportunities on how to manage an actual in-game scenario. Okay, I doubt that he'll coach the Lakers Summer League team because that's just not something that guys do. But I think that that would be the best thing for him going into coaching the most prominent franchise in the NBA.